On this short video, I wanted to mention something that most people are not aware of, and that is that the division of our weekly readings, Parshiot, was not always exactly standard the way it is today. And in one particular case, the Parsha we just read, Parshat Mishpatim, there is still a difference in various communities. Let me explain what I mean. Obviously, in the ancient times, the Torah was read differently in different places. The Talmud even mentions a minhag, a certain custom that in the land of Israel, in various communities, they used to read the Torah not in 1 year like we do, from Simchat Torah, till the next Simchat Torah, right? We finish the entire Torah. We start Breshit in the Shabbat after Simchat Torah, after all the holidays in the fall. And then we go on week after week until we finish again the entire 5 books of Moshe by the end on Simchat Torah again. Now, this is the most accepted minhag, but it wasn't always everywhere this way. And there was a different minhag where they finished the Torah in 3 years. So they read approximately 1/3 of the reading that we do, a relatively small reading. And apparently they had actually different minhagim there too, in different communities in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel. Various synagogues may have been reading different parts of the Bible or of the Chumash on different weeks. But anyway, this minhag is long ago past. We don't have any communities today that read the Torah in 3 years. But even the communities that read the Torah in 1 year, there was still certain distinctions and differences. For instance, Rav Reuben Margulies brings that they may have had a custom to finish the Torah by Yom Kippur, not by Simchat Torah like we do, and all kinds of other customs existed. But at the very least, in the last 1,500 years or so, we can be pretty sure that every community outside the land of Israel reads exactly the same parsha. I could be in America for this Shabbat, and then I could go to Yemen or to Bukhara for the next Shabbat, and I'll be reading in sync. I won't have to worry about skipping a parsha or being ahead by 1 week or being behind by 1 week. No problem. Every community reads the same parsha, except the parsha we just read, Mishpatim, as I'll explain in a moment. Now, in the land of Israel, though, there are some differences even today, and this depends on a different issue, and that is when some parsha falls on Shabbat, when it's second day of Yom Tov outside the land of Israel. So then, for every Yom Tov, of course, and second day of Yom Tov, we have special parshiot, and therefore, we could be out of sync with Israelis, and that happens all the time. This year, for instance, the second day of Shavuot is going to fall on Shabbat, so we'll be out of sync for a while, for a few weeks in a row. The land of Israel will be reading the weekly parsha ahead of us, and we would always be 1 week behind because we missed one weekly Shabbat reading when it was going to be the second day of Shavuot. Of course, in Israel, they don't have second day of Yom Tov except Rosh Hashanah, so second day of Shavuot is going to fall. It's just a regular Shabbat, and they'll read the next parsha. So when will we catch up, so-called, with the Israelis? We'll catch up when we'll read together Parshat Chukat and Balak. It's a very rare instance when second day of Shavuot falls on Shabbat. Then Chutz La'aretz we read Chukat and Balak together, and in Israel they're going to read them separately, and that's when we'll catch up. So between Bemidbar, between Naso, I guess, and Balak, we will be behind. So there are special laws, of course, for Israelis who are traveling, for people from Chutz La'aretz who are traveling to Israel, what to do when they're reading the wrong parsha and how to catch up. But that's not my point today. My point today is that every other community besides Israelis always reads the same parsha with us in America or in Europe or anywhere else. The only exception is the parsha we just read. That parsha, there was actually a tradition in certain communities to split it into two. We just read on Shabbat the Parshat Mishpatim. It's the most filled with mitzvot parsha so far. In the entire book of Shemot, this parsha has more mitzvot than any other. There are all kinds of commandments there. And it's a pretty long parsha. And in some communities, they used to split it into two. The verse, Im kesef talvei et ami, when you lend money to my poor, right? The part of the parsha in the middle of the weekly reading when we talk about the mitzvah of lending money without interest, that is a separate parsha in some communities. It's considered not part of the greater Mishpatim. There are at least a couple of ancient sources from Spain that imply that this was a separate parsha. One is the commentary of Rabbeinu Bachia. He always starts his commentary to the weekly reading with a verse in Sefer Mishlei, in the book of Proverbs. And some say because his Rebbe was named Shlomo, Rabbi Shlomo ibn Aderet, therefore he started with the book of Shlomo, right, the book of Mishlei, King Solomon's book. But anyway, every parsha he starts first with the book of Mishlei, and then he connects somehow the verse in Mishlei to our parsha. And guess what? In the middle of Mishpatim, all of a sudden he starts, of course, before the verse in Kesef Tal Ve'etami, he starts with the book of Mishlei, as he always does before a new parsha. Another proof is from Sefer HaChinuch. We don't know who the author was, but he also lived in Spain for sure. And he apparently was a student of Rashba or Ramban, and he also, before every parsha, lists a number of commandments in this parsha. And guess what? In the middle of Mishpatim, again, before in Kesef Tal Ve'etami, he lists the number of commandments. Again, this shows that for him this was a separate parsha. So I recently read something very interesting. There is this edition of Chumash by Jews from Tunisia, Ish Matzliach. And in that edition, they bring that the custom in Tunisia and in another country in North Africa, in Algeria. I've known one family from Algeria. There are a lot of Jews who were forced out of Algeria at around the time when Israel was created. So there are many Sephardi Jews. We call them Sephardim, even though they're not all from Spain, but they're from North Africa. So there are a lot of Sephardi Jews from North Africa, it turns out, that had this custom to split Mishpatim, and they have a separate Haftarah, of course, for the second Parsha, in Kesef Tal Ve'etami. And he also writes there that when do they then join a different Parsha, right? If they split one Parsha, they must be joining some other Parsha. So he says the minhag is to always read together Matot and Masei. Now, in other communities, once in many years, we split this Parsha. It happens like once in more than 10 years. It has to be a year when there are two others, and Rosh Hashanah falls on a certain day of the week. Then we have an extra Shabbat, and then we have to split Parshat Matot and Masei. Usually they're read together. Whereas in the communities of Tunisia and Algeria, they always read together Matot and Masei, but they split, as I said, Mishpatim and Im Kesef Tal Ve'etami. Very interesting minhag that I thought would be cute to know. And if you like this video, please press like and please subscribe to our channel.